Welcome, Kat. Welcome, everyone in the chat. Everyone is already telling us where they're joining from. We have someone from Germany, Switzerland, Netherlands.
I am in a co-working space in Ljubljana, Slovenia right now. So this is my professional background.
Honestly, it's nicer than my living room. So,
oh, I love it.
All right. So everyone, I have a few questions for Kat, but that should take maybe 20, 30 minutes. And afterwards, the second portion is all going to be your questions. If you have any questions that come up while Kat is talking, please drop them in the Q&A box. So there's like the chat tab, and then right next to that, there's a Q&A tab. So if you leave your questions there, we're going to be able to go back and find your questions. Alrighty?
Perfect.
Yeah, I think we can chat maybe for another minute or two before we go live, just to make sure that everyone has had time to come in. There's already 200 people in here. Amazing.
Nice.
So how are you doing, Kat?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I was talking with Vanessa before we went live, and I was telling her all about where I am right now, which is Slovenia. I got here about a week and a half ago, and I absolutely love it. I'm in Ljubljana, which is the capital. It's an absolutely beautiful city. I'm, in great co-working spaces. All of the walking, like all of the streets, there's so many pedestrian only streets. It's just been a real delight. My birthday is next week, and I'm going to an art museum on my birthday. So I'm very excited.
Oh, happy birthday in advance.
Thank you. It'll be my 38th.
Ooh, you don't look it. Slovenia, that's so amazing. I mean, I don't know anything about Slovenia. Where is it located?
So I'm here because I'm coming off of a 3.5 weeks of vacation in Italy. Vacation, kind of working, kind of vacation. And it's just the country next door. So I was last here 15 years ago in Ljubljana when I studied abroad in Germany for a semester. And then when my semester finished, came down and did a whole Euro trip to pack in. And yes, I'm coming back to some old places that I knew from 15 years ago.
Amazing. Well, I had no clue that Slovenia was right next door to Italy. I don't know why I was thinking more like Eastern Europe.
It's kind of like an in-between of a lot of things. You've got the Balkans down south of us. But yeah, it's a very unique place.
Nice. I should visit someday.
You should. I have recommendations if you do.
Oh, well, I'll hit you up for that. All right. Well, I think we can slowly get started. So how about you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you're all about?
For sure. So my name is CatCoq, and the company that I own is called CatCoq. So CatCoq, just a shortened version of my super long last name because no one can spell or pronounce Coquelette. But more importantly, I'm an artist. So I license my artwork on products that get printed all over the world. And I've been doing this for about 10 years now. So I create designs, and I work with manufacturers, with clients, with licensees all over the place to turn my designs into surface pattern design on real products. So things like phone cases or mini skirts or wallpaper or throw pillows, pretty much any product you can think of. I've probably worked with a licensee at some point in the last 10 years to make that happen. So it's a pretty exciting industry. And I'm also a teacher. So I've got tons of classes on Skillshare and my website where I teach everything from drawing and painting skills to how to create patterns in Photoshop like I create. And then I also have a more chunky, big, robust program, which is called the Art of Collections, which is for artists who want to essentially do what I'm doing, really succeed in art licensing. And I guess the unique thing about me is I'm a location independent. So I quit my job 10 years ago. And when I put in my 2 weeks notice that same day, I also booked a plane ticket to Southeast Asia. And I was like, I'm going to spend 6 weeks backpacking around Southeast Asia once I leave this job behind, because I was just unfulfilled and bored in life. I was living in Kansas City at the time, working at an agency, and I wanted to have some adventure and go see more of the world. And so I did. And so I went on this 6-week backpacking trip that never really, here 10 years later, here I am. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of who I am.
That is so cool. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, you're kind of my idol. Your career is
Oh,
goals, whether
I
that's
feel so grateful.
licensing, teaching, POD, like all of these things that you do so well. So I'm just so excited to have you here today so I can ask you all of my burning questions.
Let's get into it. I love it.
Yeah, we have lots of surface designers who are attending, and I know that they also have the same questions. So first of all, initially, I think you started by uploading your watercolor paintings to Society6, and that ended up growing into a hugely successful licensing career. I would love to hear about some pivotal moments in your career, maybe some important decisions that you made that ended up helping you grow your career into what it is today.
For sure. So actually, since you brought up Society6, getting started with print on demand, how that snowballed, one caveat I want to put in here before I get into everything, talking about what I found to be more successful, challenges I've had along the way. A caveat I want to put in first is I'll explain kind of what led to my success and things that worked out well that kind of paved the way for the next step. But everyone here is going to have their own version of what this means. It's hard to take someone else's path to building something and replicate it in the exact same way and expect the same results. I got started with print on demand in 2014, so 11 years ago. It's not what it used to be, but at the time, it was pretty much my gateway getting into this. Today, print on demand is still an option, but there might be other avenues, like other avenues that are going to kick off your own success. So I'm putting that in there first. But for me, Society6 was mine. So while I was working a full-time job as a designer, I used to, again, be a designer and then an art director at an agency in Kansas City. While I was doing that, I would come home from work, and the last thing I wanted to do was look at a screen again, because I just spent all day staring at a computer doing logos and websites and illustrations. And so I would come home from work and paint with watercolors. And so I started taking pictures of what I was painting, posting it to Instagram, which was really scary to put my artwork out there and, show everybody what I was painting, because I didn't feel like a professional artist. I felt like a designer. And so what am I doing painting cupcakes when I come home from work? But one small step at a time, baby steps, I got more and more comfortable sharing my work. It was just a hobby. It wasn't something I ever intended of commercializing. But pretty soon my following began to grow. It was no longer just friends and family. I had people start following me that had no idea who I was, but they followed me because they liked my artwork. So that's when things really started to click. And people started asking where they could buy originals or prints or anything like that with my artwork. And that's what led me to Society6. So Society6 is a print-on-demand website. Sometimes we call them PODs. And what they do is it's a website where you as an artist can set up an account. They've changed now. They're more of a private marketplace. But there's other print-on-demands like Redbubble, where you can go set up an account and then start uploading your work. And you can modify it onto their products. And so what I did is I set up an account, put my artwork on their products, and then I promoted those to my audience. So just like that, someone could get a phone case with my cupcake watercolor, or an art print, or wallpaper, or literally there's like 50 items on some of these print on demand websites. And so that's really where I started getting traction. So I think the main kind of resonating overall theme was I didn't get everything perfectly. I didn't have a business plan, perfectly polished. I was just kind of going one step at a time. I'm very much a learn as I go kind of girl. And that's the best way for me to learn, is I just want to get out there and start doing things. So that's what I did with Society6. I set up an account there, and I realized pretty quickly that I was getting a lot of traction on my designs. So then I found as many other print-on-demand websites that have that same business model as I could, put my artwork on those websites as well, and really just started growing from there. So I didn't, wait for perfection. I just kept showing up and learning by doing. And that's something I want to emphasize here. Messy starts are better than no start at all. And especially with my students, I see a lot of them kind of waiting until they're perfectly ready before they get going. And my advice for everyone listening to this is just start slowly. You don't bite off more than you can chew. Just take baby steps and go, part by part. But don't think that you have to have this whole polished idea of what your business is going to be before you start your business. It's going to evolve and grow over time.
Absolutely. I mean, 100% agree, because we see like all these professional artists, maybe people are looking at you and they're like, wow, she has it all figured out. And they think that they have to be at that level just to get started. But even someone like you started, at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Another part of it too is when I started uploading my artwork to Society6 and all of those other print on demands, I kind of treated those as a business from day one. I was optimizing my titles and keywords, and I was trying to think about this as if I'm going to try selling online through Society6, how can I make this the most efficient as possible? And again, this was slowly growing. I didn't know optimized titles or keywords when I started, but as the months went on, I started digging into it more and learning, how is the search function used? How do I have more opportunities to show up? I experimented with uploading consistently. And I was really just kind of trying a lot of things and really seeing what was going to stick. And I think probably the most important thing, looking back of when I was uploading this work, trying out print on demand, I think the most important thing I was doing was I was really paying attention to what was selling, the types of designs that were doing the best. And again, I got started in 2014. So a lot of the designs that were selling well for me, I had like a bunch of cutesy kind of bounce letter calligraphy that said fun things with floral watercolor wreaths around them. And that sold really well. Again, 2014 was kind of the heyday for that kind of aesthetic. But trends, they change over time. And it's really important to kind of evolve and grow your art portfolio too. So if I would have stuck with that exact same kind of motif trend style that I was doing then, bounce lettering, watercolor wreaths, I'd be dead in the water right now, because that's not what's selling anymore. That was really popular then, but trends, they ebb and flow over time, and it's really important to kind of stay fluid and really pay attention to what your audience is asking for.
Absolutely. And that's something that you do so well, and it's probably a huge part of your success. You have this knack for creating designs that have mass market appeal. You're so good at that. And your trend report is really good to help people, and she's giving it as a freebie. So if you all wanted her trend report, you can get it. So you can get her tips on that, because I mean, that's what she does the best. And so about trends and about making designs that have mass market appeal, I would love to hear your tips about that, because a lot of artists struggle with that. They feel like if they jump on every trend that they're going to be selling out, or it's not going to feel like them. But you manage to do both, and you do it super well. Things that really tell your own story and are very true to you, but at the same time, something that almost anyone can enjoy. How do you do that?
I mean, I think first of all, you've really got to pick and choose trends that you feel drawn to, that really align with your own personal style, your own artistic voice. I'm not out there chasing every single design trend that's popular in surface pattern design and art licensing right now. I'm choosing the ones that I'm really excited to draw or paint in my own style. And I think that's what's really important is staying true to your own unique artistic voice, because this is really your biggest leverage point. I think storytelling can also be really important. And that's something that I've been incorporating more into my artwork, especially the last 5 years or so, where when I create a new design and I put it in my portfolio, or I share it on Instagram or in my email newsletter, I tell the story of that design. And that can be maybe what inspired it, or I share a behind the scenes process into, maybe it's a time lapse of me watercoloring something, or I talk about why I felt called to paint or draw that in the first place. So I think concrete examples are probably best, especially if we're doing storytelling. So let's like botanical trends, like botanical has been a huge trend, and it's considered an evergreen trend where it doesn't really rise and fall. It's just always kind of relevant. Animal print is another evergreen trend. It's never leopard print isn't really ever going to go out of style. It's always going to be around in some way. So so an example I would have was a few years ago, I was doing a hiking trip, and I love hiking. And I was doing a hiking trip in Vietnam with my parents and my aunt, and we went with a group called Sapa Sisters, where it's all women that are hiking guides, and they lead you through on these like multi-day hikes. You stay in villages with other people. You have meals. It was a really, really cool experience. And what I did is I took a million photos, just not professionally, just, with my iPhone as I went, like I always do. And then when I got back to my apartment in Thailand after that, I pulled up one of the photos, which was a fan palm. It's like a palm, but it all kind of shoots out like a fan and a palm. And I illustrated it, and then I watercolored it. And so that design wound up getting selected for these like really cool metallic throw pillows in Urban Outfitters. And then after that, it was selected for a bedding deal with Target. And then I also got it on wallpaper, also in Target. So I got 3 really high profile brand deals out of it. And so what I did is I leveraged the story behind it. I talked about, what inspired that piece, this trip I did with my family, how it was just incredible quality time. We saw incredible, we just had these great experiences. I got to chat with Z, my hiking guide, the whole time. I mean, it was great. And so putting that storytelling in with the marketing of the design, yes, I was following a botanical trend, but at the same time, I was also coming up with my own spin on it and adding really my own artistic voice.
That reminds me of something you said recently in your newsletter. I'm an avid reader.
Oh, thank you.
You said that the story behind your designs, that is something that AI can never do. AI can't ever take that away from you. So for us artists, lean into that. It's one of our strengths.
Absolutely. And, this is something I get asked from my students and my followers alike. How do I feel about what's happening with AI, especially in the surface pattern design industry? And AI designs probably will take some surface pattern design, will be on some surface pattern designs out there, but those clients, the industries that are using that, the companies that are using that, they were never going to license from me to begin with. The Temus, the Sheins, these brands where it's about fast fashion and moving products very quickly. Those aren't really the brands I've ever licensed through. I license with brands and companies that prioritize the artist behind the design. And just as we're seeing this rise in AI and AI generative art, we're also seeing this rise in more and more companies wanting to showcase the artist's story. And so a lot of brands I've been working with, especially in the last like 2 to 3 years, are really emphasizing this. And what that looks like is, instead of me just having a design that I license for a lunch bag to be sold at Sam's Club, now what it looks like is I'll have a whole kind of display. My photo will be on it, meet the artist behind the design. My logo will be on the packaging. I had a stationery line launched last year where on the planners, they had a whole insert where it's like, meet Kat, the lady that designed the outside cover of this planner. And I got to have my bio in there. And so, there's more opportunity. Yeah, it's awesome. And this whole rising trend of meet the artist behind the design, sharing the artist stories, that benefits us so massively, because surface pattern design, I never thought about the artist behind my duvet cover when I was growing up or any, it just never even occurred to me. And now that I'm in the industry, everything I see, I'm like, oh, I wonder who did that. I wonder if I know her. My niece got a new bedspread a few years ago, and I actually know the artist that designed her bedspread. Her name's Jessie Roulet. Yeah. And I was like, hey, that's my friend Jessie's art. I was like, did you get this at Pottery Barn Kids? And she was like, I don't know where my mom got this. And I was like, well, my friend designed it. So yeah. I'm going off on a tangent. But there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for every company that just wants to cut corners and go with something cheap or AI, there's 2 more companies that really are leaning into the authenticity and the story, because customers react to that. And I think those brands who prioritize that are going to end up on top when all said and done.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
So speaking of brands and collaborations, you've done a ton of them. You've been featured in Target, Anthropologie, Home Good, Urban Outfitters, and many, many more. Too many to name right now. But I'd love to hear about your favorite collaboration, or maybe one that really surprised you, that came out of nowhere.
Oh man. Okay. Favorite, I'll do a recent one. So Crayola. So Crayola coloring books it's a product that launched last year. And this was, I mean, pretty much an absolute dream client for me because I grew up using Crayola crayons. I mean, that could have been the first thing I ever drew with, who knows? But yeah, I remember like photos of my childhood, you know, it's like me surrounded by art supplies. And so when Crayola reached out about doing this artist series coloring book, same thing. My photo is there, my bio. They really highlight the artists behind these coloring book pages. So when that project was kind of coming into focus, I got really, really excited because it was just such a dream client of mine. And it took forever, you know, licensing, you sign the licensing deal, and sometimes it's like a year or longer before those products actually appear in store. So it was like that with Crayola. I couldn't tell anyone because you sign the contract, sometimes you're NDA. And so I just had to sit on that for like about a year and a half. And then it finally launched last year, and I was thrilled. And these coloring books debuted in Target. And I was just about to fly back into the US to visit family from my apartment in Thailand a few days after the launch. And I told my parents about it. I was like, I've got coloring books in Target. And my parents are, you know, my super fans. And they went to every Target in the area and they bought all of the coloring books because they wanted to support me. All of them. And which meant when I flew back to the US and, you know, I'm contractually obligated. I couldn't find them. And like in my licensing contract with Crayola, it's like, okay, deliverables, I will do a behind the scenes, you know, reel of me walking into the store and showing off my books. And I was like, I can't violate my contract. I got to get this footage. And so I brought the coloring books my parents bought. I brought them back to Target, put them back on the shelf, and then was like, oh, hey, here's my stuff. And then I had to put them back in the bag and leave. So that was a fun one just because of the clumsiness of the story behind it and like getting this content.
That is hilarious. I mean, I remember seeing your posts about this, and I mean, I never knew. So you did good.
Thank you. I was so scared that they were going to accuse me of stealing when I was leaving, but I was like, you know, I've got the receipt, and you know what? My photo is on the product. I can at least be like, hey, look, it's me. You know, but there was no problem.
Oh, that's hilarious. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my God, amazing. All right. So going back to trends, you share often, not only in your trend report, but in your newsletters, you have a weekly challenge, and you're super good with spotting trends. I took your class trend forecasting and learned so much. But for anyone who hasn't taken that class yet, can you give us a little sneak peek, some of your tips for finding trends?
Yeah, I mean, I think really what it all boils down to is I'm interested in it. And if you're not interested, you probably can't force it, but it does interest me. I pay attention. You know, I follow a lot of brands, a lot of artists on social media. I see what they're sharing. I see new product lines that are coming out. I really just see what's coming down the runway. I mean, literally and figuratively, because I also look at fashion. Fashion is a really great place to really see what's at the forefront. You know, everything really starts on the runway and kind of trickles down from there. But in terms of trend tracking tips, I think humans are really great at noticing patterns. And when you start to, it's almost like when you turn this part of your brain on, it's almost really hard to turn off. It's like in school when I was studying typography, I started seeing and identifying fonts everywhere, and I haven't been able to turn that off since then. So trends is similar. You know, if I start seeing, if I'm maybe like scrolling down the new section of ModCloth, which is an apparel fashion company with a lot of audience overlap with my own brand, which is why I want to look and see what designs they're selling, because it's relevant to me. It's my same audience. So if I'm scrolling down on the website and I see something that I take, like maybe the color chartreuse green, which is like a really bright, vibrant green. It's been trending a lot this year, actually, and last. If I start seeing that, then it almost like ticks that thing on my brain and I start noticing it more and more. This is the picking up of the patterns. And so that's kind of how I intuitively track trends. Pop culture is also another really big indicator. So last year, Sabrina Carpenter, who's a musician, she released a music video for her hit song Espresso. And pretty much every single thing in that music video defined the La Dolce Vita trend of last year, which is everything about like Italian coast, Mediterranean vibes, tiles, ceramics, retro saturated color palettes, lemons, of course, all of that. It was all packed into our music video, which I didn't even see until December. It was way late. I was like, oh man, this would have been a good indicator for me. But that whole La Dolce Vita trend, it was one of the biggest art licensing trends of last summer. It's going to hit hard this summer as well. And and so just kind of being aware of what's going on around you and kind of paying attention. And then also a lot of companies, mine included, we publish annual trend reports. These usually come out in like December or January. And I like seeing what other companies are kind of for the upcoming trends. Pinterest Predicts is a really great one for artists, surface pattern designers alike, because theirs are all visually cued.
Absolutely. And I think something that sometimes artists are a little bit wary of is they think when they see a trend in stores that it's too late to jump on it. But licensing works so slowly that you have time. You really have time.
I was on a call a couple of weeks ago with one of my clients, and they're big in the stationery space. And so we're working on a collection line for these planners that'll launch in 2027 and 2028. So we're working way out. And what I was talking about with them is we were kind of talking about the same thing. I asked them, I'm like, oh yeah, because you guys are projecting way in advance. I was like, how are you tracking trends? I want to know if there's anything differently for me. And we were talking about longevity, and that's also something they mentioned. They were like, yeah, when something is in the mainstream, like somewhere like Target, it's actually got a much longer runway than you might think, like potentially multiple years. And especially if you're using a trend that's a little bit more robust over time. I call those evergreen trends. Again, like leopard print, they never really go out of style. They're always going to be relevant. That's kind of those are safe ones to go with, especially for something like a stationery line that's going to be, 3 years from now actually printed. But then there's also these kind of flash in the pan trends, these more like fad trends. Those I probably wouldn't use on something that has such a long, far off runway before it actually gets printed. But I really try to think of like what's something that will stand the test of time a little bit more. And certain motifs, geometric patterns do well. Anything with nature and botanicals, foliage, animals. I mean, there's a lot you can cover if you want to stay safe and really stick with these evergreen trends. When I'm working with my students and they're designing collections, especially seasonal collections, like spring, summer, winter, fall, and holidays too. These collections are things that what I tell them is my best put the most evergreen trends into these collections, because if I'm designing a winter collection, I don't want it to just be applicable for this winter. I want it to work and be licensed on all the winters to come, as long as I'm still earning an income with this art. And so fad, like really like flash in the pan trends, those are good for products that get printed quickly, things in the gifting space especially. So but things that but if you want to have, again, more longevity out of your portfolio, sticking with more tried and true evergreen trends can get you there as well.
And some of your designs have had great longevity, like that fan palm that you were talking about before. You did this years ago and it's still going.
I did that in 2017. Like that was ages ago, and it's still getting picked up for licensing deals today. So I mean, I have designs in my portfolio that I painted over 10 years ago that are still getting picked up for licensing deals. And it's just, I mean, that's really the power of creating something that has, again, more of a timeless feel. And you can do both. You can be trendy and timeless. That's what an evergreen trend is.
Absolutely. So you have put a lot of your knowledge into your new program, The Art of Collection. It looks amazing. I haven't taken it, but it looks gold.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're really good at creating collections, and you talk about how to create a collection for licensing. So I'm really curious to know if there's a mistake that you see often with your students when it comes to creating collections, and how we can avoid that.
Yeah. So first, let me just clarify what a collection is. When I started licensing 10 years ago, I was creating a bunch of like one-off designs. Like I'd paint a pineapple with watercolor, and then I do like a geometric pattern in acrylic, and then I do something in Adobe Illustrator, and they wouldn't really speak to each other very well. Mm-hmm. And that was, you know, it got me off the ground. So not for nothing, like that started just getting a prolific portfolio going was a really good first step. But then I got to this point where I needed to be a little bit more strategic, stop doing the whole, you know, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks approach, have something with a little bit more, just more strategy to it. And so I was talking with my art licensing agents. I work with agents now. The first 4 years of my career, I represented myself as an independent artist. Then I signed on with an art licensing agency, and they represent me to, help me get more licensing deals, essentially. And so on one of our calls, I was asking them like, hey, how do I up level? Like, I feel like I've kind of stagnated with income and opportunities. Like, how do I get to this next level? And I'm following their advice, and it's working. And their advice was start designing in collections. So rather than having, you know, a watercolor donut and a vector pattern in Adobe Illustrator and something else over here, think about a full collection of artwork that all talks to each other and it all feels cohesive. So maybe it's something like, you know, a selection of patterns that are all in really nice neutrals that you're intending to license for wallpaper, and they kind of feel like they belong together. Or maybe it's a collection of stationery cards for birthday, and it's a series of 4 cards, all with great birthday messaging, plus some supplementary patterns for the envelope liner. That's what a collection is. And the reason it's a good move is because now I'm attracting clients that want to not just license one-off things from me, but to build like full product lines. And so like a stationery line or a kitchen and tabletop line. And this is that next level that I wanted to get to. So that's what a collection is. And then in terms of, you asked for what my students, like the advice I would give my students, what a lot of struggles I see.
Yeah, like a mistake that you see over and a common mistake with collections.
Okay. I mean, the biggest one, it's not even collection related. The biggest one is not making that initial start and getting started with it. I even in my program, I really encourage them. I'm like, hey, just get started, like do that first step, because then the longer you put it off, the scarier it'll be. You can't, again, have some big, perfect, polished thing and then launch it. You kind of, maybe some people can, but I feel like the vast majority of artists, like we get inspired, we're intuitive, and really leaning into that can be a good move. And then a mistake I see that's kind of along those same lines is, this is probably the biggest one, is some artists are really comfortable with getting their collection ideas out of their head, creating full collections, and then they look beautiful and stunning, and they've perfected them and they're great, but then they don't do anything with them. They don't put them out there. And honestly, it's the most effective way. Like, what is going to move the needle the most in terms of getting licensing deals? If you're brand new, you've got a cold pitch. You've got to email clients, cold email, which I know is really scary. It's hard to put yourself out there, but you just got to do it. And yes, you can have these great collections that you're designing, but then you also need to send them out into the world and find people to pitch to that are most interested in those. So, you know, one thing I found is I've given my students templates for pitching, right? Like, here's exactly what I recommend to say in that cold pitch. I give them a dreamiest dream list. It's a spreadsheet where they can kind of track their pitches and follow up, because so much of this industry, you know, it's the art, it's the creativity, that's the fun part, but there's also the business steps you need to take as well. But let's go to the fun part, which is the art creation side for actually making collections. I think the biggest mistake there is not having an idea of where this final collection is going to is going to have a commercial application, like, or maybe they're not thinking about what that final product would be. And it's something I talk about with my students. And it's great to kind of see that click in their head, and then they think, okay, there's fine art, and then there's commercial art, and I love making money with my art. Like, I love being able to live this lifestyle I live, travel the world full time. Like, it's incredible. And my art gets me there. So thinking about that commercial application. And an example there, because I think examples are probably the strongest way to learn and remember, you're going to get way more broad appeal out of a Valentine's Day collection than, I don't know, like a national bubble bath day collection, which is January 8th. I looked that up. And it's because Valentine's Day, there's so many opportunities to get your artwork on products that are going to get sold. Cards are obviously the big one. So any of my students that are working on Valentine's Day collections, they're going card focused first. So they'll create, a series of cards, we call them heroes, and maybe some supplementary designs again for like gift wrap, things like that. But they're thinking about the products that are most applicable for that collection theme. So, designing a Valentine's Day collection, you think about what those end products are. Cards are the primary product. Valentine's Day is a good one because it's kind of a heavy hitter. You have a lot of cards and a lot of gifting supplies getting sold, but it's also it's a holiday that also celebrates decoration. So you kind of get a 2-for-1. You can really broaden what the products might be, and that impacts the way you design them.
Absolutely. We are all very good at creating pretty art, but you're so right. Thinking about the function, that's also really important. And I actually design just like what you said. I always start with a greeting card design in mind, and I build my collection around that. And the funny thing is, I often end up selling or licensing for completely different categories. I don't actually sell a lot of greeting cards. I do like gift wrap paper a lot, gift and stationery and things like that. But just thinking of it as a greeting card helps me hit up all those occasions, and people buy for occasions.
Yeah, and I think that's you kind of hit the nail on the head. By the way, if you want to get into greeting cards, I've been having a lot of success with Evite, and they were not even on my radar before because they're digital cards. But they've actually, they're one of my most profitable card licensees right now. So check out Evite for cards.
Nice. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, these, and in my, in the art of collections, I give my students these monthly collection challenges. And they're not just these willy-nilly ideas of like, hey, I think it'd be great if you guys all drew frogs in January. Like, it's not that. It's me thinking of what is going to give them the most solid foundation in their portfolio to give them the best chances of getting licensed. And again, that's thinking of things with broad commercial appeal. So every challenge we have every month is kind of around this idea of what would be a really good collection to have in your own portfolio, because it's in need. There's a big demand for it. The seasonal collections, like I mentioned, getting all of the 4 seasons in your portfolio is a great place to start. Major gifting, holidays, Valentine's Day, like I mentioned, really thinking about these strong evergreen trends like animals, food, drink, quotes, typography, special occasions like birthday, anniversary. So really, yeah, I'm rambling, but these collection challenges, it's all baked in strategy.
Absolutely. And that's what you all explain in your program, the art collection. I saw a few people in the chat say, I'm in it and I love it.
Oh, awesome. I have to look at the chat after this. I can't talk and read.
I know. We had Bhagyashri saying, I'm learning so much in art of collections. I'm a baby in the world of surface pattern design, but this course is extremely useful and filled with information. Kat is the best.
Oh, that's really sweet of her. Yeah, she did a fun collection recently where it was gym rats. And it was like these super cute little rat illustrations. It was like rats and then, like working out. And then she mocked those up on products showing like what that would look like on like a gym water bottle, and thinking about what the collection theme was, what these products might be, so she can pitch them to the right types of people. So, hey, Bhagyashri, I can't see you, but I hear you're in the chat. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Okay, well, we still have like 20 minutes, so let's go in the Q&A. We have lots of questions. And wow, we have like 424 people live with us
Woo!
right now. That's amazing.
I hope my internet doesn't drop off. No, just kidding. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's been really smooth so far.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Otherwise, Vanessa, it's all on you. The rest of the call.
So we have a question from Debbie. She said, how do you make your art stand out for people to find you on various sites?
There's a lot of different strategies I've used. One of them I kind of coined passive pitching. Active pitching is sending out these cold emails. It's building up your dream list of clients you want to work with and then reaching out. But that's probably the most effective when you're getting started. But there's also a big power in discoverability. And so what I mean by that is let's go back to the very beginning days, Society6, Redbubble, Spoonflower, these big print on demand websites. I wasn't just uploading my artwork and that's it. I was also taking the time to write a really nice biography on those sites, link back to my website. I put my email address everywhere. And so it was really, really easy. If you see my artwork, out in the wild or online, I made it really easy for someone to find out who I was and contact me. And a lot of those early on licensing deals, like Urban Outfitters, happened because of this whole passive pitching approach. Urban Outfitters, I can't remember if it was Society6 or Instagram, but they found my work on one of the two, and I have my email address. It's right there on my Instagram bio. It's right there on my Society6 bio. And a buyer from Urban Outfitters reached out to me because she saw my work and she wanted to know about a licensing deal. And I responded back almost immediately, like very enthusiastically. And so yeah, there's definitely a power of getting discovered, but just do it in a really strategic way. And what that means is make yourself as easy to find and contact as humanly possible. Put your email address on your website, your about page. If you don't have a website yet, put it on your Instagram. Really, really just make it easy for people to reach out to you about potential licensing deals, because it does happen.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, I find that even if you do something that's a common style, so to speak, like watercolor, your voice still kind of comes through. Like your watercolors or your work in Procreate now, lots of people work in watercolors and Procreate, but when I see yours, I could pick it out of a lineup.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's another thing I want to hit on in terms of questions I get asked a lot, especially from my students, is there's this big resistance in finding, your one signature style, your one artistic voice. And it doesn't have to just be one. Some artists, they have one distinct style and voice, and that's awesome. But others like me, I'm a little more ADD. I can't just only do one medium and that's all I do for the rest of my life. I like India ink, I like acrylic, I like watercolor, I like Adobe Illustrator, I like Procreate. I do a lot of different things. And inherently, when you're working with different mediums, your style doesn't always look like the exact same. It can't be replicated between, geometric patterns I'm doing in Illustrator versus my more fluid and flowy watercolors. But what really holds everything together is it's okay to have multiple styles as long as you have a large enough body of artwork to really hold it together and show that each style is cohesive. This is the power of collections too. Like my collections, they don't always have to be the same medium, but it does help. So I'll have whole collections where it'll just be these like really textured acrylic. I like using heavy body acrylic where you can really see the brush, the bristles come through when the paint dries. I'll have whole collections like that, but then I'll also have the very flat graphic vector illustration patterns over, in a different collection. And that's completely fine. So don't think you just need to have one style. Your artistic voice can be spread across multiple styles, multiple mediums.
Mm-hmm. And even though your two styles look completely different, there's still like a connecting trend, because it's like your signature themes and your stories, and there's like a vibe that's still like a CatCoq vibe.
Yeah, I think color is a big one for me. I like really bright and saturated colors, which works. It's funny. It's like it works for most products that most of my clients are like, they're like gung ho, like Technicolor mug, let's do it. But then some clients, like especially in the home decor space, like wallpaper, I work with Roommates Decor, and they're my wallpaper clients, and they're amazing. I've been working with them since 2019. I've done like multiple collections over the years, but they have an in-house design team, and so they take my watercolors and they're like Technicolor, vibrant, and then they'll make them like very sophisticated neutrals, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be way better for a home than just a giant, depending on your taste. But for some industries, certain color palettes, tend to do better. And so wallpaper is one where, yes, there's always going to be a demand for a bright and colorful statement wall, but the vast majority of my wallpaper sales are my more sophisticated, desaturated, neutral, monotone palettes.
Mm-hmm, that makes sense. I just imagine their in-house team just taking the saturation and then bringing it down to minus 50.
They're just like, girl, you got to bring this down. Yeah. Even some where they kept the color, I'll pull up, because I always have to approve digital proofs. So before any product can actually get printed and manufactured, I have to approve it first to make sure they used my artwork in the right way, to make sure my signature was where I want it to be. There's no weird cropping. I approve everything before it goes out. And whenever I'm approving the wallpaper, I'll like pull up what they sent me next to my original files, and I'll be like, you desaturated that by 50%. Like,
I know what you did.
I know what you did. Yeah. But you know what? They know their industry. They're the experts in wallpaper. They know what's going to sell, and it's accurate. Like these designs that I have on wallpaper sell really well, and that's me also listening to their expert advice. They're the client. They know what their customers want, and so there is a lot of collaboration and back and forth there too.
Interesting. We had a question in the Q&A. Someone asked who you're repped with. I know that.
I'm repped with Jewel Branding and Licensing. So they reached, it's kind of a funny story. When I was living in Bali in 2016 or 2017, I decided, I was like, oh, I'm going to find an art licensing agent. And I spent basically a month doing nonstop research. I had a whole Google Doc. I had all my top contenders. And then I did not listen to my own advice. I decided I was too overwhelmed, and I just did nothing. So the whole list just got backburnered, and I was like, oh, I was finally at the point where I'd done all my research, and I found the company that was the most fitting for me, which is Jewel Branding and Licensing. And then I never reached out to them because I got scared. And then a year later, they actually sent me a cold email asking if I would be interested in hopping on a Zoom call and getting to know them. And it was just like, I couldn't believe it. I was fangirling super hard, but I tried to play it cool. And and that's really what kicked things off. So it was, in some ways, it was kind of like the final contract negotiation, the contract negotiation to end all contract negotiations, because once I signed on with them, it was important for me to come up with the terms that I was okay with, that was, fair for both parties. But then what they do now is they are, if I find a new client, I will funnel them through Jewel, or maybe, and sometimes they go out and they have their own outreach, and they're trying to find clients for me to work with as well. And so they're out there doing the contract negotiation. Sometimes I'll push back, but I don't have to negotiate with the clients anymore. I'll just let my agents know, hey, everything looks good on this royalty rate. Thanks so much for getting me up to, 7% or whatever it was. But sometimes I'll say, hey, but I'd really like to get product samples, or I really need my signature on this product. Like, can you just go let them know that that's a necessity? And then they'll go and negotiate on my behalf. Whereas I used to do it all myself. So that's been nice to kind of clear that part from my plate to a degree.
Absolutely. And that's an amazing story that they ended up reaching out to you, which I do want to say, if anyone is listening in the chat, don't take that as an excuse to not reach out. Like, oh, they'll reach out to me if I wait long enough. That's unlikely.
It was an anomaly. Yeah. But you know what? I want to say it's the power of manifesting to a degree, but I mean, I was stalking them. I was seeing the artists they represent. I was seeing the brands they get in through. And that was also dictating how I put presentations together, the types of artwork that I was creating. It's me paying attention to this industry and looking at, I guess, a brand that I looked at with such aspiration. I mean, I still do. And I wanted to see everything they're doing. you know what? Here's a tip for everyone listening, and you, Vanessa, of course. Go to an artist's like an agency's website, like Jewel Branding and Licensing is mine, and then go see all of the artists they represent and see the types of artwork they create, see the product placements they're getting, the brands, the brand partnerships, that kind of thing. And then that can give you an idea of what's possible for you as well. Even like for my own students in the Art of Collections, I was showing them what my brand book looks like, which is kind of like, it's kind of like a resume. It shows who I am. It's in the freebie bundle of resources. So Vanessa, when you asked if I had an offer, I was like, oh, we'll do the trend report. And then I also threw like 4 more things in that Dropbox folder. So it's more than that. And one of the things is my brand book. And so you can actually flip through and see what that looks like, what a professional licensed artist brand book looks like. And if you go to the Jewel website, you can see all of the other brand books as well from their other artists. So you can see who they partner with, again, like the types of designs that they're creating that are selling well. Maybe it gives you ideas of who you want to add to your own, dreamiest dream list of clients to pitch to and outreach with. So yeah, there's inspiration all over the place. It's just get inspired by it. Don't get bogged down thinking, oh God, I can never get to this level. Again, we all start from zero.
Absolutely. And that's such a great tip because most agencies do this. My agency does too. We all have our brand books up there. So even as a casual observer, you can get a lot of information.
Yeah, go copy what I'm doing. Seriously. It's everyone, even if you look at the way I structured it and do something similar for yourself, everyone's going to have their own unique artwork, their own unique bio, their own brands that they want to work with. So there's so many resources out there.
We have a very interesting question from Angie, and she says, what if I don't have an interesting story? I just love creating. So what do I do? And I know, like, we listen to your stories and it all starts with that one time in Vietnam. and a lot of us, we don't have something as exciting as that. But then what do you
Angie, okay. First of all, Angie, you've got an interesting story. Everyone here does. I'll give you an example from one that wasn't, inspired by a volcano or the jungle in Vietnam. My most profitable design in my portfolio for 3 years running. I do not have an example of it. It's called Retro Sunshine, and it's a really simple. It's a sun graphic with rays radiating out. It's kind of this retro color palette.
I know just the one you mean.
Okay, it's everywhere. It's been licensed so many times, and that did not have a big adventurous story behind it. The whole reason that artwork came to exist in the first place is because I was designing the baby shower invites for my sister-in-law, who was pregnant with my niece at the time. And she had just told me the name. She was going to name my niece Aurora. And so that's her name. She's 4. She's turning 5 in October. And so I wanted to kind of use something with her name. I thought of the Aurora Borealis, which is, it's the power of the sun that causes these incredible northern lights. And so it really just stems from the sun. And so I wanted her baby shower announcements to be the sun. And so I illustrated it for the baby shower invites, sent them to Kelly. She had a great baby shower. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put that design in my licensing portfolio too, just to see what happens. And it got picked up like crazy. I mean, it was very popular. It's still getting licensing deals today. But the story behind it wasn't, me having some epic experience, somewhere in the world. It was just me creating a piece of art for my sister-in-law because I was so excited about my niece. And that storytelling is probably one of the most compelling stories that I have behind my artwork because it's just so, it's my favorite one to share. So like when I talk about that story, it's like, I'm excited. I'm always smiling. So I think of my niece Aurora, and you can still have storytelling and be compelling without, going off and having crazy adventures. Tie it in with your own life and the things that you're passionate about, what makes you tick, your hobbies. We had a collection challenge in my community a couple months ago. The monthly challenge was hobby and special interest. And so I was encouraging my students to think about something that they're interested in. Maybe it's gardening or pickleball, which is a big trend right now, or, it could be a sport, it could be a hobby, it could be creating art, anything, and create a collection around that as kind of a niched in collection while thinking about that end consumer as well. And so, you know, some students would do, they did like a tennis collection, and then they showed it on products like the kind of tote bags that you bring, the water bottles. Others would do collections all about gardening, and then they would mock it up for kitchen and tabletop spaces. And so they're just taking their own interests and fusing their own stories into these collections. And that's really what makes them more memorable, when you're really kind of channeling your own interests. So everyone has an interesting, some interesting perspective that they want to share with the world. And you can do that through your art.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be this huge exotic thing.
No. I mean, it's fun. It's fun to share those stories, but you know, I equally have the boring stories that I think are more compelling, the Aurora sun stories, you know, for the artwork in my portfolio.
The boring stories can be more relatable sometimes. They can really be something that strikes a chord emotionally with people.
That's a really good point. And having that relatability is a huge factor into strategy with art licensing. Like if you can create a design that someone is, you know, browsing the aisles of Target and they don't need a new planner, but they really like that cover. That's how you know. That's how you know
I feel
you're really
called out. I feel called out.
I know. I don't even have, I mean, I travel full time, but I can't tell you like how many art prints I own that just get stacked in my parents' house. And I'm like, one day I'll have a place to put these, but it's just the art speaks to me. It spoke to me. I don't have a place for it, but one day I'll put it somewhere.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Juanita ask, do you have any tips for earning money quickly when you're just beginning your art business?
In terms of earning money quickly when you're just beginning, I guess two approaches. The first one would be, what is the lowest hanging fruit? And what I mean by that is there a way that you've already been able to monetize? You already have a system in place. Can you dial it up? Like, do you have an Etsy shop and it already has some traffic? You don't have to learn something entirely from scratch. It is the, you know, it's the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing you can do that you dial up. That would be one approach. For me, it was print on demand. When I started having success on Society6, I found every other POD site that had a similar business model and non-exclusivity, which meant that I could sell my designs there, other websites, that kind of thing. And I just replicated the success I was having with Society6. So that was my low-hanging fruit. The other one is it's putting yourself out there. And yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, I wish I could give you something really easy and fun, but it can be fun. It can be fun if you gamify it, but really sending cold pitches and contacting companies, introducing yourself, explaining, I am an artist. I love your brand. I would love to talk to you about licensing opportunities. Here's a link to my portfolio, or here's a Dropbox link to my 3 best collections. Let me know if you have any questions. You know, you can always go from there, but so much of my own, my success stories, especially at the very beginning, were basically putting myself out there, formulating these partnerships, and a lot of my licensing deals are recurring. So, you know, we signed that first licensing agreement years ago, but then we kind of re-up every year or every 2 years or whatever the terms of the deal are.
Because
so
it's
really
still selling.
Because it's still selling. Or maybe they're like, okay, now we want to do a new line. We had like the first edition. Now let's do something different. Or let's just keep the same design going because it's selling well. That was the story of the sun for so long. But yeah, forming these connections, really just not being afraid to get rejected, because you're going to get rejected way more than you're going to get yeses, you know, but it's not the rejections that define you. It's the yeses that are actually making an impact in your career. Plus, it's good to get rejected. It's good for our character. It's good. It humbles us. You know, it can't all just be easy wins the whole way through. And yeah, and so you can really put yourself out there. And like what that looked like for me at the beginning was I would go to shops around Kansas City where I was living at the time, and I would ask them if I could have products in their store. Like, could I sell consignment? And a lot of those opportunities were me creating my own product. So like me screen printing my own tote bags, me finding a screen printer to screen print tote bags for me. And then I would give those, I would sell consignment through stores, or I did like little lapel pins. So I did screen prints. I did a bunch of stuff. I went to art and craft shows. I would get a booth, especially around the holidays when everyone's buying gifts. I mean, there were spans where like every weekend from November until Christmas, I would be just like schlepping all my stuff to these art fairs, selling, working like 16-hour days and just talking to people and being utterly exhausted by the end. But that's what I felt like I needed to do at the time, was just really like, how do I quickly make money? I can go to a show, invest $500 in the booth, and then really hope I can make that back and then some to justify my time being there. So there's, even though like what I'm doing now is art licensing, I've done a lot of things. I did a lot of freelance design at the beginning of my career when I was transitioning into print on demand and licensing, because freelance was something that I knew was guaranteed income. Like I can crank out a logo, I can do a layout. That's what I did professionally for years. And so I would take on freelance clients, even though, do I want to be designing logos for the rest of my life? No. But I did it for a few years because it brought me income. And so at the time, it was just, let's explore all of these different options, and let's see, one, what I enjoy the most, and then two, what's actually the most viable in terms of giving me income, which gives me freedom, which is the most important thing to me. Is I just want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And and that's it's been chasing that is really what I've been doing the last 10 years.
Wow, you've done a lot more than I realized.
I
love what you
freelance,
said
baby.
about freelance. That's a great one. And that's actually how I started in surface design when I switched over from picture books, because I didn't have a huge catalog to start pitching. So at first I was getting a lot of responses from companies that were like, oh, that's great, I love your style, but we're looking for butterflies right now. I didn't have that. So I just offered to do it custom for them. And that's how I got a lot of my early deals. So that's a way to get in quickly, hit the ground running.
Yeah. And honestly, just being friendly and approachable, be easy to work with. I mean, this is probably the best advice. If you want recurring, partnerships and really put a lot into the investments that you're putting into your professional relationships, just be easy to work with. I mean, deliver files it doesn't take that much. Just be reliable, be friendly. It really goes a long way. A lot of opportunities I had at the beginning were through companies that I already worked with. Like Society 6 was one. They were doing this was in, I think, 2017 or 2018. They were doing like a big creators panel at Coachella, and in Palm Springs. It wasn't in Coachella. That was the bummer, because Beyonce was there and I wasn't in Coachella, but I was just outside of it. And so it was a panel for artists that was put on by a company called Create and Cultivate. And Society 6 wanted to have one of their artists there representing the brand and talking about, just basically how I leverage print on demand to, fulfill my creativity and earn an income. And so I got to speak on this panel, not because I'm the best artist on the Society 6 website by any means. Like, there are so many successful artists. It's just because they knew me. Every time I would fly back to Thailand, I would like stop in LA for a few nights and then go schmooze with the Society 6 team, like knock on the door. Hey guys, do you want to go out to lunch? And I really put a lot of effort into, this networking and just building these relationships. And so when opportunities came my way internally with Society 6, I wanted them to think of me first, because I'm easy to work with and I'm reliable. And that's actually how I got started teaching. It's because Society 6 wanted to have a sponsored class, like a Society 6 sponsored class on Skillshare, teaching other artists how they can get involved with print on demand. And so they asked if I wanted to do it. And at the time, Society 6 was my biggest income provider at the time. So, I mean, I would have done anything they said. Dance, monkey, dance, I would be dancing, And so they asked, they were like, oh, do you want to film a class for Skillshare? It'll be under our branding. You'll kind of be the figurehead of it. You'll fly to New York. You'll meet with the Skillshare team in their studio, teach a class, and then they'll edit it. All you have to do is just make an outline and then just talk about everything you know. And I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it at all because I didn't think I would be good at it. And I it terrified me. Like, the idea of being in front of a camera, it was scary. I just liked not doing those things. But I said yes, and I did it. And I mean, the whole time we were filming, it was a 2-day shoot, and I was so nervous. I don't even remember what I said. Like I just kind of like the camera turned on and I was like, and then I just said everything I knew about print on demand. And then I remember leaving thinking like, oh man, I screwed that one up. But then they sent me the edits and I was like, oh my God, I'm coherent. I wasn't just blathering on. And then that's really what opened the door for all of the teaching I do now. I mean, it's why I'm on the Zoom call right now. I never would have done anything like this unless an opportunity was presented that I didn't want to do, but I challenged my comfort zone because, you know, as much as I was like, oh, I'm not going to be good at it. I don't know what I'm doing. Part of me was still curious. Part of me was still like, well, let's see what this is all about. And I want to foster this relationship. And so opportunities can kind of come from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to listen to our gut feeling. Sometimes the gut feeling is, ugh, and that's one that you want to leave behind. But sometimes the gut feeling is just fear. And that doesn't mean that you should not try. That means that you should try.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't think you should just get out of your comfort zone for the sake of getting out of your comfort zone. I think it needs to align with your goals. And so, you know, you've really got to think, like a few years ago, I went skydiving in New Zealand, and I've never been interested in skydiving before. I did it on a whim because my friend really wanted to go with someone. And I was like, yeah, I'll go. And I never need to do that again. That put me out of my comfort zone, but that didn't achieve. And I learned I don't like skydiving. So, but you know, but thinking about like the way I approached doing this class with Skillshare and Society 6, that was out of my comfort zone too. But there was a part of me that was interested. I was curious. And I kind of wanted to see what would happen. And so that was an opportunity to get out of my comfort zone in a way that, you know, scratched an itch and helped me find another passion that I really, really like. I love teaching. I love being able to see my students have massive, like big, like huge progress and these big mental leaps in the right direction. One of my students, Chris, she posted a few days ago what her portfolio looked like before she joined the program. And then she was like, and here's what it looks like right now. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, this is the kind of stuff that I love seeing, because so often our own progress is so incremental, we don't really see it. But when you kind of have this black and white comparison, it's really cool to kind of, you know, whether it's through others or yourself, like it's nice to kind of have these anchors in time to kind of see where you went from there.
That's really cool, especially that you helped her do that. That must be so fulfilling.
It is fulfilling. It is fulfilling. Yeah. I'm trying to get her. I'm like, for her, she has such an interesting, unique style. And I'm like, you got to get into editorial. I was like, you got to find fashion opportunities. Like there's very streamlined designers. There's ones that have very distinct voices. There's all these different opportunities depending on what your artwork output looks like. And so I told her my dream for her is to do the Clinique guest bag. Like, you know, you get like the gift with purchase Clinique bags, and every once in a while they'll have an artist. One of my friends did one a few years ago, and I was like, Chris, I was like, you need to get the Clinique bags. Like you would be so good at that. Like your artwork is perfect. But yeah, going off on a tangent. Being able to see these progress points in yourself can be really motivating to keep you going to that next level.
It's a little bit past 12, but you mentioned before we went live that you'd be okay going to maybe 12:15 or 12:20. Is that still the case?
Yeah, let's keep going.
Awesome, because we still have many questions that we haven't gotten to.
Sip my tea.
Okay, let me just find a new one. Okay, we have Yasmina saying, as a beginner, is it good or bad idea to have collections in similar color palettes? In other words, does repetition of the same colors or themes between different collections negatively perceived when sending out cold emails? So does every collection need to be completely different, basically?
It's totally up to you. So within my own collection deck, which is also in the Dropbox folder that I linked to with the freebie, with it says trend report, but it's way more than that now because I went overboard. In that, you'll see my own collection deck, Yasmina, and you can actually see how I've structured my own collection deck. And I do use a lot of repeat colors. Like I'll tell you exactly how this came about. the retro sunshine illustration I made for my niece Aurora, because that design did so well in my portfolio, I wanted to replicate its success. And so what I did is I created a bunch of new artwork that had that same kind of look and feel, including color palettes. And so that one illustration turned into a collection because that one single illustration was doing so well. And so now when I create color alts, so I'll do like one illustration of like a kitty cat, and I'll create a dozen color palettes for that. And so one of the color palettes is almost always going to be that retro sunshine palette because it was so successful on that illustration. And I mean, I had a huge stationery line with Happy Planner launch last year, and all of the colors are that same retro sunshine palette, even though they didn't license retro sunshine. They licensed everything else in the collection except for that one. That could have been because of it could have been licensed elsewhere. There could have been an exclusivity issue, but I mean, it was still it kind of took those same colors. And so when you see my collection deck, you will see replicating palettes in some, and I do that for my best-selling, best-performing palettes. But I also know other illustrators, like Elizabeth Olwyn is one, and she uses a lot of very similar color palettes. And so if you follow her on Instagram, you'll be able to see, like anytime I'm scrolling Instagram, I see her work and I know it's hers before I see her name because her style is really strong. She's always using like these very, just these really nice, beautiful, harmonious color palettes throughout her work. And so that's part of her artistic voice, is using similar color palettes for a lot of her illustrations. And it's done really well for her. She just did a really fun, speaking of wallpaper, she just did a fun wallpaper line where it is really nice, bright colors. And so it's up to you. I'm rambling on this answer, but it's totally up to you. But one more bit of advice I would give on color palettes is if you're creating a collection and it's a really strong one, and maybe a lot of the designs have been getting commercial interest, or you haven't even pitched it yet, but you have a feeling it's going to do really well. My advice, not for all of your collections, but the ones where you're like, this is a big winner, is to duplicate that collection and create a color alt that is in a color alteration, like a different color palette that's completely drastically different from the first one. So maybe the first one is like pastel, blush and mint. Maybe the next one is like charcoal background jewel tones, something that just feels so distinctly different. So they're not cannibalizing on each other, but you're opening yourself up for more opportunities. Like maybe a client doesn't want the pastel one, but then they see this very bold, dramatic, deep jewel toned color one. And they're like, oh, well, now we like it. And color palettes are the easiest thing to change when you're as an artist, when you digitize your artwork. So, it takes me way longer to concept and thumbnail and sketch and paint and digitize than it does just to make some quick color alts in Photoshop. So that would be my advice there.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because art directors can be so specific, and sometimes, they love everything about the design, but they'd like it, even one color, they'd like to be something else, and they just won't license it. It's sometimes they could request things, but a lot of times they just move on because there's so much art to look at. So having a few different options, first of all, shows them that you can change the colors, and you will if they ask. It opens this door. And then second, maybe the other color palette will be exactly what they're looking for.
Exactly. And, this is kind of, this leads into mock-ups. And what a mock-up is it's like a digital version of your art. So like, how do I explain this? And I'll use my mug and I'll use my phone case. So this is my phone case, and it's a real product, and I can take a photo and it's a real photo. But if I want to show what 10 of my designs look like on phone cases for a client so that they can see what my design is going to look like on their product, I'm not going to have 10 phone cases printed and shipped to me and photographed to show them. That's expensive. It's a waste of time. It's unnecessary. I'll download a digital mock-up online. I find them on Creative Market. Createsy is my favorite brand. And what it is it's usually a Photoshop file where with just a few clicks, you can see what your artwork looks like on that product. And I use these all the time for the same strategy, Vanessa, that we were talking about, of showing a client, I don't want them to poo-poo something just because, it's not the perfect right color. And I found that when I show designs on a product that I'm presenting to a client, they're more likely to get licensed, but I'm not going to show wallpaper mockups to a tech accessories client. I'm going to show tech accessory mockups. And so I'll use mockups strategically for that as well, to really customize for a client so they can see, I feel like they'll get more excited, when they get to see, oh, these are our products, this is what the design looks like, rather than having to connect the dots and imagine it themselves.
I've noticed the same thing. I think it's a bit shocking how little imagination art directors have sometimes. If they don't see it on the exact product,
and they're art directors.
Imagine it. I know. So it's like they can't even imagine it. One very recent example, my agent was selling gift tags for Barnes and Nobles, who owns Paper Source. And they asked us to take some of our patterns and take out the motifs and just put them like on a white background so that Barnes and Nobles could picture the gift tag. And you would think that they'd be able to do this by themselves, but here we are. And we sold a bunch of gift tags after doing just, a few minutes of like, okay, this one, that one, putting them on white background, and it worked. We sold a bunch of them.
It is such a good, and it's a great strategy. It works. I mean, I learned the mock-up strategy back when I used to work at that ad agency or design agency in Kansas City. And my boss, the founder, we were doing a business identity for a brand, which included business cards. And I gave them like 6 options or something. And my boss was like, okay, now what design do you want them to pick? And I was like, hands down, this one. And she was like, okay, then get rid of additional 3. You don't need to show the other 3 or worst 3. And she was like, and the one that you want them to go with, we're going to mock that up and we're going to like make a faux business card. And we had this like faux embosser in the back, and I like brushed on like with a gold pen, like to show if the edges were gilded, this whole thing. And I made it look really premium and nice. And so they saw what their business card will actually look like. They got so excited. That's the design they chose. They didn't even look at the two alts that we came down with, because we showed them here on this actual product. Look at this. And it converts. It converts.
It really does. And that's so funny. Of course, if you include a design that you don't like, they're always going to pick that one. So
they
don't
always
even
pick
show
it.
it.
That was like the first professional lesson I learned in my career when I used to work as a graphic designer. I was like, if you show them the one you hate the most, they're gonna gravitate towards it, and then you're gonna be illustrating a full, Panera Christmas line with these like ink blobs you didn't even like in the first place. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's like you only show your top 3, and then the one you like the best, you put in the middle, a bit bigger, like 15% more polished. It always does the trick.
I put like a little star next to it in my presentations, and I'll be like, Cat recommendation. So it usually they go with it.
Yeah. We had a great question from Beth. She says, if you do different things, she says she does surfa design and fine art paintings, should they be separate accounts on Instagram, or is it okay to show all the work that I create in the same account?
It's totally up to you, Beth. I mean, I turned my personal Instagram into my business Instagram. So like, if you scroll back to, 2013, you're going to see pictures of my dinner, So I guess it really comes up to you. There's pros and cons for both. Obviously, if you have an Instagram account that's like really tight and polished and all surface pattern design, does that look a little bit stronger than something that also has, a bunch of fine art that, might not be as applicable? Maybe, but at the same time, let's go back to lowest hanging fruit. What are you more likely to do and actually engage with? And if managing one, I'm struggling to manage one Instagram account right now. I don't think I posted in like 2 weeks. And I can't imagine doing 2. And so if that's going to be an obstacle, then keep it consolidated, keep it with one. And, I feel like Instagram it started out as this very polished platform. Everybody wants like a really beautiful grid. Now that's mattering less and less, because more real, authentic content and video content too is getting prioritized, and people are encouraged to show more of the gritty behind the scenes, not necessarily like a perfect polished version. All of this is to say, I post personal stuff on my professional Instagram all the time, because it's important for my brand for for my students, for my clients, for people to see I'm a real person, I'm a real artist. It's not just, these flat JPEGs of illustrations and patterns all over my grid. I want to show myself as well, because I want to work with brands that prioritize putting the artist forward, these brands that do the artist story. And by making myself more front and center in my brand and my Instagram, showing more of my personal life, like pictures of some cool hikes that I've been doing. Do I monetize my hiking experiences? No, but it's part of who I am and it's part of what inspires me. And so I share that on my Instagram. And I think it does make my account a little bit more, it's more personal. I think it's more engaging. And so I would lean towards combining it into one account, fine art plus your surface pattern design. But maybe start with the same account. If it gets muddy or you don't like it, separate in the future. But it's hard to separate and then bring it back. So,
And your account, even though you post, a whole bunch of stuff, it still really feels coherent because it's all you. And that's the common denominator. So I would perhaps venture a guess that Beth, your surface design and your fine art painting stuff might still all feel like it has the same vibe. And you might even find some licensing opportunities for your fine art stuff, because that could work for wall art or puzzles or postcards. There's a lot of opportunities there too.
Ness, I'm so glad you brought that up, because when I've answered this question for students and they're showing me both, I a lot of the time I'm like, you know what, they're almost indiscernible. They should just belong together. And, I have stuff in my portfolio like that fan palm. I almost consider that more, especially a lot of my watercolor stuff. I consider it almost looks more fine art than these more, punchy, modern, poppy illustrations that you see on stationery products. And there's still a place for those. Like the more fine painterly style of my portfolio, home decor is where it does really well. Like people want something that feels fine art, sophisticated in their homes, whether it's a throw pillow or your bedding or wallpaper or, a gallery wall, whatever it might be. So you might think that there's, like a crazy difference between your two styles, but from an outsider's perspective, usually they can marry pretty well.
I had a question this week from a student, and she started out saying, I have two different styles and I don't know which one to choose. Which one do you prefer? And I'm looking at this, I'm like, I don't see the difference. Are there really two different styles? And she's like, well, on this one, I use slightly different brushes. And it's like, girl, we can't tell.
I do the same thing with my, I'm like, okay, these are two totally different vibes. Da, da, da. And then I'll look at them a week later, or my agents will be like, we really needed to see two distinct concepts. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I gave you. It's two distinct concepts. And they're like, no, those aren't distinct. They're too similar.
No. I think we sometimes forget that style is a range. And even sometimes switching media or using like different brushes or different colors, it still all feels like it's a coherent part of the same style. And having a style doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have your process with exactly the same every time. There is some room for experimentation or different things, and it's still all going to feel like you, unless it's horror and cute Barbies, there's a limit.
This is my vampires and bloody ghouls collection. And this is my cute kittens on clouds collection.
But I find that that's rare. Most of the time, it's the opposite. Students feel like they have two things that are completely different and don't work together. And to an outside eye, it really looks like it fits together because it's the same person that made it.
This is why it's really important to have someone, like whether it's, an Instagram friend or someone in real life or a community online or whatever. It's really important to have other people, especially artists and other creatives, that you can bounce ideas off of and show them, because sometimes people point things out in my own artwork that I haven't noticed before. Maybe like a hallmark of my style that I just wasn't, because you're in it, it's so hard to kind of pull back and look at it from a broader perspective, but others can do that for you. And having a community of artists, or, even a friend that's an artist, someone, people that can kind of look at your artwork and give you, a peer critique is so valuable. I mean, it's the best thing you can do. And if you don't have a friend or someone that can look at your artwork, the one thing that helps as well is to put it aside for like a day or maybe a week, and then you pull it back out later and you look at it with fresh eyes. And when I do that, like when I'm self-critiquing my own artwork, which I self-critique my own artwork, and I also sometimes I'll post on Instagram and I'll get opinions from others, like which background color is working best, like which color palette, which motif. But anyway, when I'm looking at my own artwork and doing this self-analyzing, here's what works for me. Might not work for you, but the approach that works best for me is I'll pull it up on my iPad in Procreate, and then I'll jot all of these notes on top of it of things I'm noticing, like background color too saturated, detracting from the main motif, or like the lion's paws are inverted in a weird way, fix that, or the tail of the cat is boring. Can we have it wrap around a leaf in an interesting way? And I jot down basically like as I think of it, I just write it all down and I'm circling and I'm mocking up on the artwork. And then that way I don't forget anything, because it's so easy to look at it and you have all these things and then you forget. So that's just a little tip, is just mark it up, make it rough and messy, and it can be really helpful.
That's a great tip. I mean, on Procreate, we can do that. So let's take advantage.
I do it too with my watercolors. So even
really?
after, sometimes I'll do a sketch and I'll take a picture of the sketch. And if I've been staring, I don't do this always. It's usually when I'm struggling. Like if I've been staring at it too long and I can't figure out why it's not working, I'll do the same thing. I'll, put it aside for a few days, pull it up in Procreate, and I have to draw on top of it on a new layer, non-destructive editing techniques. But I have to have that like tactile approach to it. So it doesn't just have to be Procreate. It's anything. I just need to mark it up physically, and taking a picture with my phone, sending it to my iPad, and doing that is just as effective.
Nice. Well, we've almost been here an hour and a half. You've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. I don't want to take any more.
It's time for dinner now.
I mean, it is where you are. It's like coming on 6:30.
Yeah, 6:30.
So we're gonna let you go. Sorry for everyone who didn't get to your questions, but if you want more Kat, join her newsletter, download her freebies that she's given us generously, and you can join her program, The Art of Collections, of course. Over there, you can ask her all the questions that you want.
Woo, love it. I don't think I have anything to add to it, except just thank you so much for inviting me on. It was really fun to get your email, just asking if I wanted to participate. Having this whole summit is incredible, because it's just so generous. It's really generous to have all of these different creatives come on. There's no, massive upsell. There's no ulterior motives. It's bringing a bunch of artists together, sharing ideas really generously, and helping everybody kind of up level and rise together. So Ness, thank you so much. And thank you everybody who joined.
Absolutely. There were so many people, and so many of you stayed until the end, even though we ran long. That's amazing. And thank you, Kat, for accepting. I mean, you were the one person that I really wanted to come. And so when you said yes, I was like, my life is done.
Thank you for being accommodating when I was like, look, I don't have time to put together a class, but I can show up and do a Q&A if you want to have a conversation. So thanks for just being open to that.
Great. Well, I think we're going to leave it there, because we can keep going with the compliments for like an hour more.
I got to go get some wine. Yeah.
Well, have a nice evening, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.